One. And it's all knotted up at 2 games apiece. The World Series is starting again here on Baseball Talk Radio Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Baseball Talk Radio Show. My name is Rich.
And I'm Gary, and let me get myself up there. There we go. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
How are you today?
Hello, Gary Mack. How's everything?
It's good. We're having some gremlins, apparently, with our video and audio today, so I hope the people will bear with us.
Yes, we love the gremlins. We just, anything that comes down the road for us, we can overcome usually. So I'm sure we'll carry on with our podcast. And how about that World Series? It's really starting to get interesting.
It certainly is, Rich. It's 2-2 now, and we're going into Game 5 tonight. And look, Houston did what they had to do. They had to win a game in L.A., They did that. L.A. did what they had to do. They had to win at least one in Houston to bring the series back to L.A., and they've accomplished that. And so this looks like it. Well, we know it's going to go at least 6, and it could go 7 easily at this point. And it's been a back and forth, exciting series so far.
Yeah, it has. It's been one of those series that attracts people to watch it. And before the last game, Game 4, there was a lot of talk about Houston. I seem to have seen a change in a lot of the broadcasts, even in MLB Network, a lot of the radio shows. Of course, the momentum was on Houston's side, and it was easy to jump to their side, and it almost seemed like they and I know what you said earlier in the last podcast. If you're rooting for the other team, it always seems like some of the announcers are rooting against your favorite team, especially if they're doing bad. But it just seemed like, a lot of people want Houston to win this World Series to me.
Well, I just think it's something different. They've only been in one other World Series and was swept. They've already improved upon that by winning 2 games. And I think because of the hurricane and the whole thing, people are pulling for Houston more than they are L.A. this year.
Yeah, and it's not a difficult thing to do. The Astros are a younger team. They're a bunch of guys that aren't necessarily on the level. Some of the Dodger players, certainly the salaries aren't at the level of the Dodger players, so it's easier to pick up on that. And with the troubles that Houston has had as a city with the storm and things like that, it's just a great story, a baseball story coming out of the World Series. And the Astros still may win the World Series, but the Dodgers did what they had to do last night. They had to win that game. I think it was do or die for them, even though the series wouldn't have been over. This levels the playing field, and it almost starts off what I call the best of 3 now. It's going to be the best of 3 games, and the winner is going to win the World Series. And the Dodgers, to their credit, did not give up. They battled on. They're in Houston. It's very difficult to win on the road, but they kept their nose to the grindstone last night, and I think Astros pitching let up a little bit on them last night.
Well, yeah, it's been a battle of the bullpen so far, and I guess you'd call it a draw because the other night when the Astros won in L.A., it was really the bullpen that kind of blew it for the L.A., and I know there's a lot of criticism of Roberts for pulling his starter, Rich Hill, in the 4th inning and then having to let the bullpen go. Seemed a little crazy to me to pull him that early, but, that's the analytics, and this is the part of the game that I think is going to lose people instead of getting more people in. if they start pulling these guys early in a game, especially in a high-powered game like this, there were those that say, well, in a regular season he wouldn't have done that. Well, why would you change anything different in a postseason rather than doing what you've done all year? But this is where the analytics said he was weak the third time around the lineup. But, I mean, it came back and bite him when the bullpen folded it up and really lost that game for them. And, Houston last night, just Morton pitched a good game, and then the wheels came off a little bit. And, that's how it goes sometimes. But it definitely has been the bullpen so far, and the Dodgers seem to have the better bullpen overall, but here we are sitting at 2-2.
Yeah, and the Astros still have this home game to play here, Game 5, starting at 8:20 p.m. on the night that we're doing this podcast. Of course, the World Series all knotted up here. You couldn't ask for a better scenario here. I love when the games go 2-2, especially, as you said, Gary, how they worked it out where the Houston Astros won in L.A. and now the Dodgers won in Houston. So you've got a little bit of the best of both teams going on right now, and you got a battle of the K's tonight again. Kershaw for the Dodgers and Mr. Dallas. How do you pronounce that last name for the Astros? I can't do it.
Keuchel.
I always want to say Keuchel.
I think Keuchel is the appropriate way of saying it. And Rich, you hit on something a little earlier when you said that was a big win for L.A. last night because tonight they have Kershaw going, and if he can repeat Game 1 performance, they go back with the lead. If the Astros can get to him, then they go to L.A. with the lead. So big game, pivotal Game 5, always is big, and we'll see who can come out on top.
That's for sure. The battle of the K's tonight, probably two of your best pitchers in the whole league. And how have you liked the broadcasts so far with Buck and Schmaltz on Fox? I think they've done an excellent job so far.
Yeah, I think they've been fine. I think the two-man booth is probably better. Schmaltz is a good analyst, and Buck is Buck. He's going to be there, so you got to just deal with it. And again, without having a home team interest in it, like we said last week, the LA announcers or the LA fans think that they're pulling for Houston, the announcers, and the Houston fans probably think that the announcers are pulling for the Dodgers. So it's all a matter of perspective. But I think overall they've done a good job.
Yeah, I think they've done a fair and impartial job myself. I was referring to some of the talk shows like on MLB Network that I was watching. It just seemed like a landslide of announcers were going for the Astros. Just every time I turned on the XM radio to listen to them the other day before the game started, I was like, I got to change the channel, of course, because I'm rooting for the Dodgers. But we're going to see a baseball game on Halloween tonight, or this year rather, because of this tied-up series now, 8:20 p.m. in L.A. On Tuesday night, Halloween, and then if necessary, as you said, Gary, it might go to a Game 7, which would land us in November 1st at 8:20 p.m. So do you really think this is going to go 7 games, or one of these two teams going to win this outright?
Good point. I think it'll go 7. I think I could see a scenario where Houston wins tonight, LA comes back in Game 6 and wins, and then we go to Game 7. Of course, anything could happen. LA could win the next 2. LA could win tonight, go back with a lead. Houston could win Game 6. Anything could happen at this point. And don't forget, Houston's going to have Verlander in Game 6, who's been outstanding in his postseason. So that's their Kershaw, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. So with everything on the line, either way, in Game 6, either facing elimination or to take it all, they're going to have Verlander there. That's what they would want if you couldn't ask for anything better set up than the way they have it set up now.
Yes, indeed. Now, you mentioned the pitcher for tomorrow night for the Astros, Verlander. There was an article in the Daily News, the New York Daily News this morning, about a report of a complaint of slicker baseballs in the World Series. And Verlander's name is all over this article. He has a few quotes here. He says, quote, "It's different. I noticed it's especially throwing a slider. It didn't feel the same. The home run I gave up to Peterson was a slider." So he's claiming possibly that the balls are slicker in the World Series. Maybe they haven't been roughed up enough. Also, Yu Darvish said the same thing. He said, quote, "I had trouble with the ball throwing a slider. It was slicker." So pitchers on both teams saying the same thing. And I wonder if this is something that's been authorized or on purpose for this World Series, or it's just ending up to be that way.
Who knows with Rob Manfred? He could have maybe wanted more offense in the World Series, and they told the umpires not to rub it up as much. Maybe the guy's doing the rubbing up it's interesting because my first thought could be, well, maybe because it was 100 degrees in L.A. when Verlander pitched, maybe it didn't, it just didn't take when they rub it up with the mud. But being that it happened in Houston as well, I don't know. It could just be the umpire. I think it's usually the guy behind the plate that does the rubbing up with the mud of the baseballs. Don't know if that's the same thing in the postseason or not, but it's an interesting situation, and it's from both teams, so we'll have to see what happens. Didn't seem to bother Kershaw or anything, but again, it could have been a different guy rubbing up the baseballs.
Yeah, and it has been on both sides, and these guys are professionals, so you'd have to trust them. The Dodgers pitching coach Rick Honeycutt said that it's a serious matter that the MLB needs to resolve the baseball issue once and for all. He said he knows that the MLB has been talking a while about having a ball that's more like the ball in Japan, where the leather is tackier so that you can use it right out of the wrapper. That was a direct quote. I think something has to be done from Rick Honeycutt. So it'd be interesting to see if the MLB has a response for this, or else maybe, as you said, maybe the balls just aren't getting rubbed up enough prior to the game. I know they generally do that a few hours before the game or more, and it's generally done in the same fashion every game. There's a mud applied to them. I think the mud may come from southern New Jersey here. I've read somewhere, I've seen a report where a lot of the baseball mud is gotten right from southern New Jersey. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I have read that somewhere.
Yeah, I've seen that myself, or at one time it did. I'm not sure if it still does, whether they changed the where they get it from, but I think it was from Jersey. So I don't know. Maybe they not using the same mud. Maybe they ran out of it. You had to use something else. I don't know. It's very interesting, but I'm sure I'm curious to know why Rob Manfred hasn't addressed anything. He addresses everything else. I mean, he's talked this week about realignment and expansion, so I'm surprised he didn't. Maybe they don't want to talk about this.
Maybe if they have knowledge as to a change, of course. But whatever the case, that the World Series is going on quite well. People enjoying it. Nice offense and defense during the series. There's another minor controversy about the television broadcast. One of the Astros players, Springer, was hidden behind an on-screen ad, so to speak, during the game and during a hit. It was a CGI advertisement that gets placed onto the screen, and it actually you couldn't see Springer's head during that when they did that. But that's just a little bit of, I guess, what would you call that? A little operational error.
I guess so. I guess a little blue screen or something. I don't know, but and the other controversy, of course, was the first baseman of Houston making what's been designated as a racial motion or something towards Yu Darvish, and he actually got suspended for 5 games, but they're not going to suspend him during the series. He'll get the first 5 games of the season next year off. And I have not seen it. I've read. I have not seen it. I have not seen a picture of it or anything. So I don't know if you've seen anything on that. But other than that, it's been a pretty quiet and a pretty solid, well-played World Series.
Yeah, I have not seen exactly the play that was involving what they were talking about on this. I do have a little audio here of Manfred talking about what will go on with how the punishment will be handed out. Let's hear a little bit of that. And of course, every time I want to do that, something happens on my end. So that I will not be able to play on this broadcast. But as you said, yeah, the suspension will be handled at a different time. I didn't see it either, nor was I aware of it until I read about it the following day. I still don't know what's involved, other than Gurriel supposedly pulled at the corners of his eyes and used a racial slur about a Chinese person, so to speak. So not to be tolerated by the MLB, and especially when you're on the field and you're at that level. Of course, you're going to be it's like you're on a big stage, a Broadway stage. You're not going to get away with those things, even if it's a joke.
I guess so. I don't know. It's just like I said, I didn't see it, so I don't know what he did or anything like that. And I mean, 5 games seems to be a bit much, but that's what he decided on. So that'll be the punishment, and it'll take place at the first part of next season.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate, and I wouldn't even go as far to say that he should not have been suspended for the rest of the World Series, starting it immediately. If you do things like that, you've got to understand that the consequences are not going to be good, in my opinion. I wouldn't have minded to see him suspended right on the spot. I mean, why wait till next season? In April, nobody cares, but that could have cost him and his team a tremendous amount for the World Series. So I think that was a generous suspension by the commish there, and a gift, so to speak.
Well, I could see he doesn't want to upset the balance of power, because then you always have a question mark. If LA goes on to win, they'll say, yeah, but we didn't have our first baseman. So he didn't want to get involved with that aspect of it. The thing I don't understand about it is, then why didn't they wait and just say they're investigating it and wait until after the World Series and then announce the suspension? I think that might have made more sense in the long run.
Yeah, and that really, the whole situation is a little bit strange. Of course, I'm reading up on it right now. He made the gesture after he hit a home run off of Darvish in the second inning in Game 3 of the World Series, right in the dugout. So he's just, somebody that didn't think before he did this action, obviously. Don't know why he would do this even at this stage. But, things happen in the heat of the battle, I guess, and people are different here and there. But especially with the world as it is, with the taking the kneel for the NFL players, I think I read another article recently where there was only one player in the MLB that had even tried to do this and follow through, and he was just arrested on a gun charge, apparently out of Oakland. Don't have his name here for the broadcast, but
well, his name is Maxwell, Rich, and the interesting part about this is this gun charge really opens up a can of worms about this guy, because a couple of weeks ago he claimed that he went to a restaurant and he was refused service by a waiter that was a Donald Trump supporter, and was totally against him taking this action and bowing. A couple of days after that, it came out that the waiter and the restaurant manager said it's a total lie. It was a total fabrication of everything, that event never took place. And now, so now you could think, okay, maybe it was a he said thing, and we'll never know the truth. But now to have this thing come out with the gun to a delivery person, he whipped out a gun. He was arrested for it now. It makes you kind of think, is this guy maybe a publicity seeker of some sort? Maybe he knows he's destined to be a backup catcher or a AAA catcher. Maybe he's trying to make a name so he can get some kind of, nowadays you get paranoid about everything. So I don't know. I mean, he had some good press on his side, as far as from the mainstream left wing media. But this latest incident with pulling a gun on a delivery person for apparently no reason really questions everything about this guy. And you got to wonder if he's, thrown in with the fact that he made this story up, or allegedly made this story up in a restaurant. I don't know. His credibility seems to go out the window.
Yeah, and of course he lives in Arizona. They have somewhat loose gun laws there. Who knows? Maybe he was drinking. Taking a look at his mugshot as I'm doing the podcast, he appears to not look like a very nice person in that mugshot. Of course, a lot of people don't in a mugshot, but he's got the tattoo coming off his shoulder and things. And if you had to make a quick assessment, just from looking at somebody's picture very quickly, you would say, I wouldn't want to meet up with him in a dark alley somewhere. But, hopefully all works out well for him, and whatever the reasons he decided to do that. But, I think his playing career may be coming to a quick end because of this.
And again, it's hard. It's it's probably not fair for me or you to make a judgment on this guy, but it's just the fact that when you throw in he did this, he did the kneeling. Okay, that's okay. He did that. All right, but then to throw on it this other thing about the restaurant, and then to have it completely disputed as it was, and now to have this on top of it, it really you gotta really think twice about the whole situation.
Yes, indeed. It's definitely not a good situation for the player and for baseball. He, as you said, he took the knee. Was it for publicity? I don't know.
Or was it?
But we'll have to see more as the story unfolds here. But great news is it's a great World Series, and a lot of this sideshow, so to speak, will not be a part of that. And that's where that stuff belongs, way, way out to the side, because it's not the whole of baseball, and it's not what baseball stands for. So glad to see a great World Series here. We have another game coming up tonight, Game 5, as we carry on with this nice postseason here. And I didn't think I'd enjoy this series as much as I am, but I'm really loving this series.
Yeah, it's really well played, and both teams have really distinguished themselves, and I think it's been a good, solid series.
Yeah, and I like the ballpark down in Houston. It's got the odd angles. It's sort of like a Boston in a certain sense, where they're hitting the ball off the wall. Sometimes it's coming back into play. And the center field, dead center, is not your typical center field out there. It's got some corners in it. So, yeah, the Astros and Houston, I've always kind of liked that field. And I've liked the Astros when they're in the National League as well. So they have the Crawford boxes there. And, of course, L.A., when the series shifts back to there, you have all the stars sitting in the seats. They're panning to different stars. I think Pat Sajak was there the other night, and a few other stars were there. So it's always interesting to see that. For me, at least, I like to see that on TV as they announce the different celebrities there.
Yeah, and if you notice the right behind home plate, you see Larry King all the time, and I can't remember the girl from Entertainment Tonight. The first host, I can't remember what her name was, but she's always there behind home plate as well. So, like you say, you get to see them all at the LA games.
Yep, the stars come out to see their Dodgers, and well, any new predictions for this series? I know we gave our predictions, our teams that we like. You're thinking 7 games, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm still thinking 7. I don't even know. It's a crapshoot now. It seems like they win one, lose one. And then they switched it about. So tonight's going to be a big game. Game 5 is usually very pivotal, and tonight's going to be more so.
Yeah, tonight, I think you hit the nail on the head. If the Dodgers win tonight, I think they take it in 6. They could easily go back to L.A. and win this. If Houston wins tonight, then they could win it in a Game 6 as well. But it's going to be interesting. As you said, this is a pivotal game, probably one of your most important games of the whole series. It's going to determine who has an easier chance of winning this series. And I just came across another article here. Mike Trout, I can't stop thinking about one of the best players in the game. Hasn't been in the playoffs that much at all in his career. I wonder if he's going to end up like a Tony Gwynn from the Padres, that he was a great player for most of his career, but he never really excelled or had a chance to excel in the postseason. I just can't stop thinking about that in comparison with Trout.
Well, look at Ernie Banks. Never even made a postseason because they didn't have. You won a division and you won your league and went right to the World Series. So, a guy like Ernie Banks never played in anything, but we'll see. We'll see whether they can build it up again. The Angels, and they've had some success in the past. So he's been on some decent teams, just not good enough to go all the way.
Yeah, and of course, I get a little bit more of Trout's off-field activities in my area, the Philadelphia area. He's in attendance at all the Eagles games. He has seats right on the field, doesn't have to mingle with the crowd. Him and his buddies, probably from Millville, or maybe they're out from California, who knows, but they get the VIP treatment there at Lincoln Financial Field. He got a game ball the other day, and pretty interesting the way he comes home to Millville and he stays there. He's not a player that's going to transplant himself out to the West Coast and stay out there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next in Mike Trout's career. Will he move to another team when he becomes a free agent? Will he stay out in the West Coast? And we'll just have to see.
And speaking of moving to another team, there's a lot of rumors about Giancarlo Stanton, and it seems like the new Marlins ownership wants to move him, and the front runner so far would be the San Francisco Giants so far. Any thoughts on that?
Wow, I didn't hear that. I would.
I know you want him in Philly.
I would be wary. I'll tell you. I don't even think the Phillies should pick up that contract. It's a huge contract. Giancarlo Stanton does get injured quite a bit. I know last season was probably an anomaly with that. He seemed to be healthy, and I was glad for him of that. But the first couple years of his career, I just always remember him as somebody that went through a lot of injuries. So especially now that the bulk of his contract is coming due, that's why the Marlins want to move him, obviously. Maybe they don't think he's worth all that much money, but if the Giants end up with him and want to take on that salary, I'd be all for it. You'd have Pence in right field and Giancarlo probably in left field. And you'd have a potent offense for sure.
And it gets him out of our division, so we won't see him as much, which is a plus as well. So I can't argue with that. But some other quick notes, if we may. It looks like the Nationals are going to hire Dave Martinez as their manager, the bench coach of the Chicago Cubs. So that announcement will probably come after the World Series. They won't say anything now. So that's the rumor there. What about the Phillies, Rich? Any word on their manager?
Haven't heard, other than they had a few more interviews. John Farrell apparently was interviewed. Word is that they're still going to fill this position internally, and that's rumor, of course, but there's certainly a lot of available candidates out there for this job, and frankly, I don't know why it's taking the Phillies so long to announce this. They've had an adequate amount of time, I think, to select a manager, but they're not rushing it. Not sure why. Don't know if they're looking for more candidates or just waiting for the World Series to come to an end. I'm not quite sure, but so far, nothing concrete coming out of who's going to get it in Philadelphia.
Very interesting situation, and very interesting that nothing has escaped there. More rumors about who they're interested in. And Rich, how about Rob Manfred talking about expansion, mentioning Montreal and Portland and Charlotte as potential landing spots, and also talking about a possible realignment. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if they do add a couple more teams, you're probably going to have some realignment. But again, we've seen a lot of changes in the game over the past couple years, specifically with Manfred since he's gotten into the game as commissioner. Anyway, he's probably changed this game more than any commissioner in the history of baseball already. And I'm not for the radical change that a lot of the proposals that he's bringing up. So I wouldn't be a big fan of it right off the bat. Haven't read too much about it though. But change happens, especially in sports and other things. Everything changes, and we would probably adjust to it.
Well, one of the things that has been hinted at is getting rid of the leagues, and I guess getting like like football, just have the divisions. I don't know how I feel about that at all. I don't. It would probably mean the designated hitter rule go into effect throughout baseball, and I just think that some of these changes that he wants to make, and the analytics are like two things that are going to kill this game.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that they wanted to eliminate the National and American League. I think that's one of those radical changes that shouldn't take place, just due to the history of both leagues, how they came into existence and how it merged into the Major League Baseball setup. And the different leagues, apparently people in the American League love the DH and people in the National League do not like it. So it coexists in baseball. It melds in well when interleague play happens. I don't know. I would leave a good thing alone myself. I wouldn't change anything that radically, but that's just me.
I'm with you. I wouldn't change it either. I mean, the only change I would make is to eliminate the DH and get rid of that completely. But everybody says, that's not going to happen. But I'm looking here, and it says there's on Google, remove Ron Manfred as Commissioner of Baseball. So apparently there is a petition out to get him out of there at change.org. So that's one of those sites where you can people start a petition up and
commissioned a petition to get rid of the commish.
So that's up there. So there's quite a few people that aren't happy.
Yeah, I could imagine that. The baseball purists and just baseball fans in general, like you and I, we don't live, sleep, and eat baseball like some people that are getting their salaries from baseball. But if you listen to some of those people, they're not for this as well, all this radical change. First of all, I don't think baseball is broken. So I'm the kind of person to say if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. You're going to break more things by doing that. But we'll have to see what happens as time goes on.
And that's for sure. And, look, he may have some good ideas, but I just think they're going after the wrong crowd. He wants to go after this younger crowd. But are they casual fans or are they rock solid fans? And you're not going to convert them.
Yeah, there's nothing. A carrot and a stick's not going to bring somebody into a baseball game and have them all of a sudden spend a lot of money on games. Baseball has sort of catered to the corporate mentality in the last couple of years. We could see that with the ticket prices and different stadium setups where you have all these clubs, You have to be a member of this club, or you have to pay $500 to get a seat. So, baseball's been through some changes itself in the last couple of years without even trying to worry about fans. I don't think attendance is down that much. Viewership is not down that much. I don't see a big glaring problem with baseball myself. Maybe they see more things that I don't in the commissioner's office or ownerships, things like that. But I think if you took a poll of owners, that they're not that probably upset with what's going on in the world of baseball right now as far as fans.
Well, I mean, look at the salaries they're still paying out there. So, if it's doing so badly, I don't see it either. I know they're talking about the future and everything, but I go back to what I said in the past. Then how come when you see, they say not enough kids are coming or playing baseball? Well, how come all of these places that have these tournaments are booked solid all the time? In Cooperstown, in Maryland at the Cal Ripken site.
Across the country, probably.
Yeah, you can't get a team into these things that book them, and all these traveling teams and everything. If the game is suffering with the youth so much, how come all of that stuff is full? I think you hit on something, though. I think a lot of it is the cost of a ticket. When we were kids, we could just go and get a ticket for $1.50, 75 cents or something. Now it's $50. That's where the problem is. That's where they've got to address it.
And believe it or not, I went to a game towards the end of the season in Philadelphia, and I hadn't done this in years, but I actually bought my tickets from a scalper. I could have went and got seats on StubHub. I could have went to the ticket window. There was plenty of tickets available. But I hearkened back to the older days where I remember, there was people on the ground in the stadium area. They're selling tickets. You take a little bit of a risk, but my wife and I went up, and I bought us tickets from a scalper, and I got them for a song and a dance. It was close to the first pitch time. And I waited up until that time because sometimes that's what you do. Yeah, these guys, they want to get rid of these tickets. They don't want to eat them. They don't taste very well. So there's plenty of people still milling around the stadiums. And that goes back to the days where, that's before the internet. Paper tickets, before all of this $100 a seat. Things like that, and sometimes you gotta be inventive to do things like that. And kids, I say kids, I'm talking 25 years old, 20 years old. They've never been through something like that. Years ago, we have, Gary and I. So you can harken back to your old methods, but the kids, quote unquote, 21, 22 of today. They've never experienced that. They don't even know that exists, some of them, except for the hearing of, hey, you got any tickets? Anybody have any extra tickets as you're walking in? So little tip there, if you're going to a game next year, you want to save some money on a ticket, I guarantee you're going to find somebody outside the stadium selling tickets, and you might save a bundle on it.
Well, and I've always considered StubHub and those things as almost like legal scalping. I mean, they're not getting more money. I get that. And, and baseball has to look at that and say, well, why are they so successful? Why do so many people buy the tickets from those places and they're making money? Because they're selling them cheaper. Yeah. And that's why people use a service like that. So maybe the owners have to say, hey, we got to cut back on some more ticket prices. I doubt if you'll ever see it. But maybe that's what Manfred's got to get into a meeting with them and suggest something like that. It probably will go on deaf ears, but, I think that's where the problem is.
Absolutely. There's so many things you can do for your entertainment dollar. even sitting at home is a viable option now for a lot of people. They have 65-inch uh, televisions that
High
look,
def.
yeah, high def. The latest technology. They have their friends over. They can have a nice time watching the game if they're baseball fans, and not spend $500. As you said, Gary, I remember taking my son and a couple friends to a game a few years ago. Probably, I'm talking 20 years ago now, so that's not a few. It's more than a few, but you could get three or four tickets and decent tickets for 100 and a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can't even touch that for under several hundred. So the average Joe that works 5 days, 6 days a week to make a living and pay the bills doesn't have an extra 400 or 500 to throw out at a game, and it's just something that they wouldn't even consider. They'll go down to a movie for $50 and have popcorn, sodas, and the kids will just have a wonderful time as well. So I think you did hit a nail on the head. The game is getting very expensive for the fans.
It certainly is, and then if you want to eat at the game, I mean, it's an expensive proposition, and if you do it once a year or something, it's okay. But they want more people to come, but you can't come at those prices continuously.
Yeah, so we hope if the MLB is monitoring our show, and they probably do, that we know from being banned in certain outlets a year or two, a couple of years ago. I know MLB got a little bit upset that some of the podcasts were coming out talking about different teams with different teams in the titles of the shows, things like that. And I'm sure there's somehow, there's somebody from the MLB listening to each and every podcast that comes out about baseball. So if you're listening, that's a great tip to keep some fans coming back to the stadium, if you will. A little bit of a better price for especially the better seats. I don't want to sit up in the top row, and I don't want to spend $50 to do it.
No, especially at our age, Rich. We don't want to climb all those stairs and stuff. So get some of them lower level seats priced more reasonably.
Sure. Well, we hope you liked this edition of the Baseball Talk Radio Show. The World Series rolling on for 2017, and then, of course, we'll be talking the off season with you almost immediately after the World Series. So the fun never ends here on the Baseball Talk Radio Show. Gary, you have a great rest of the series, and hope you enjoyed as well.
I will, Rich, and you do too, and we'll see everybody the next time.
Very cool.